it serves me and my interest to communicate in a way to them that is going to lead them along the trail of breadcrumbs in a slower way than I would approach someone who is already a member of my choir. And I think that you understand that. I'm not pretending that you think that this book is a field guide to go out into, the middle of the panhandle and start proselytizing. And I don't mean to be that way. But what I do think happens is that there are figureheads that don't share your policy beliefs and don't share your historical understanding and don't share your commitment to left politics, who use language about original sin and how what we have to do is, quote, build a world where such a view has no place or quarter to breathe. Use the kind of openness and the vagueness of that language, so kind of the spiritual vagueness of that, to say that should be our central project, not Medicare for all, not equal housing for all, not canceling student debt, not canceling medical debt, right? And I absolutely do not believe that is your project, because I have followed you for years and I have so much admiration for you, and that's why I'm bringing you here today. But what I'm questioning is whether or not that kind of language is weaponized in service of maintaining a status quo where we can all sit and kind of pick the lint out of our belly buttons and talk about the abstraction of racism without talking about that important piece that you brought up that I think is put so well, which is that policy can be a tool to start to change people's hearts and minds, as it were.
The more we talk, the more I'm beginning to think that we don't disagree on
it's very narrow
on the substance of the matter. It's really about perhaps a different space in which we function, in which we operate. So the political question, as you imagine it, or as you enact it, is shaped and framed by, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, by the reality of bare knuckle politics, of the electoral process and the like. The politics that, how I'm imagining it, has at its core a moral question, an ethical question about who do we take ourselves to be, who do we aspire to be, right? And trying to deconstruct this insidious view at the heart of America's self-conception that requires of you and me a kind of quieting of who we are and how this country has oriented itself to people like us. And what do I mean by that in its particulars? Baldwin has this wonderful formulation. It's the early Baldwin. It's in an essay entitled Many Thousands Gone, in Notes of a Native Son. And he says, it's as if you want to make our faces blank in order to wash away your guilt. That the precondition for and this is my language, that the precondition for my entree into American society is that I have to leave the particularity of who I am at the door. And that's on the right and on the left in this country. And so part of what I'm trying to do is to argue for and to fight for and to give voice and language to what might be necessary to clear the space for us to imagine ourselves otherwise. And I worry, Bri, if I may, that if we concede to the demands of politics as such, out of the practical and pragmatic impetus, that we have to talk in this way as opposed to that way, that we may leave in place, right, the very things that end up, choking the life out of democratic possibility in the country in the first place.
I like what Eddie Glaude has to say, but my issue with Eddie Glaude is, even though he talks about policy, he still spends too much time talking about hearts and minds. And I don't care about hearts and minds of white people or people of color. I don't need white people and people of color to stop being less prejudiced, as in saying mean things or rude things or looking down on me because I'm Black. I need institutional racism to end, because that keeps people from having enough money to live in certain neighborhoods. And that's the stuff we like. We want real tangible stuff. Like, I don't need all white people to stop saying the N-word. It would be cool if y'all did, but I don't give a fuck if you don't. You know, say it around the right Black person, you might get popped in the mouth. But just saying, I know people who don't went to jail for fucking up white people for saying nigga. For some people, it's worth it. So, you know, do as you feel. It's a free country. So that's my only thing with Eddie Glaude, though. That's my issue. Like, I don't care about changing people's hearts and minds. That's not my goal. We can change people's hearts and minds through the curriculum with children. We're not gonna get somebody's 70-year-old grandparent who grew up in the heart of Dixie in the South, growing up not realizing that the South lost the war until they were like fucking 14. You understand? Like, there's so much indoctrination that goes into living in the South. Like, for you to not be a racist, you did some work. You did some work, like, for real. And so you just can't expect to litigate people's hearts and minds. That's not the goal. Like, let's put policies in place that will help Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery specifically. And after that, do the class bullshit y'all talking about for everybody else. And us, because we want double. We get hit twice.
Yep.
Go ahead, you guys. What y'all got?
I got two things real quick for me. Number one, it seems, okay, I mean, we may have tackled this before and someone may have said it before, but I'm not sure if we have. But it seems like all of BriBri's reasoning starts from a conclusion and then tries to fill in all the if, ands, hows, and whats, right? She's of the conclusion that this class thing is the only way to get things done. We got to get a big coalition, whether it's built on sand or not. This is how we do it because everybody agrees. But it hasn't worked. Yeah, they've got a couple of bodies in Congress. Great. But they are all under the thumb of Mama Bear Pelosi, so to speak, right? As soon as they get in that office, they start functioning as every other Democrat for the most part. So that experiment has failed. I mean, there's no way to get around it. That experiment has failed. Yeah, do you have every once in a while, like Congresswoman Tlaib has had words with Joe Biden about Palestine, but the Black folks in the squad aren't doing the same type of thing for us, right? So this flawed conclusion that this is the only way forward and then filling in the gaps on the way is backwards. It's backwards. It's weird because she's so married to it. I mean, it seems during this discussion, it seems like she's going through an existential crisis when she talks to Eddie Glaude. You know, Eddie Glaude is, like you were saying, Sam, is a lot of this hearts and minds and flowery talk, but it is really bothering BriBri Joy that she can't convince Eddie Glaude to think like her. It seems like it's really bothering her. All right. That's one thing. The second thing is I view America. This is the weird analogy that came to me a little while ago. I view America as a cake, right? We have all these ingredients, the people, the land, things that were done. But the thing that makes that the cake is heat. And that heat is our oppression, right? Without grappling with that, you will never understand how this cake was built, how this cake was created, and then if you don't deal with that, you're going to lose, or going to continue to lose. That's a serious issue, and that's all I got. Mud, what you got, man?
Well, I mean, Eddie sounds good. He sounds really good right now, but the problem is that we understand when the other shoe drops, there's not going to be anything there. He's like leading us to a point that's not really going to be resolved because he's just arguing for the idea of talking about solutions about race. He's not actually arguing for solutions. And it's good that he's at least giving Brianna some pushback on this because she's completely given up on that whole fight, or she never was in that fight. I'm probably gonna lean more on the latter. Her thing is this class thing, and she understands that it's not going to fulfill all of our needs, but she doesn't care. She thinks that this is the only way to do something. And I mean, the thing is that it's not successful. Like if she could show us any wins that isn't going back to the, the 30s, 40s, and shit like that, like, then, maybe we could hear her out, but it's not like they're getting anywhere. And ultimately, even if we did support them, we know we're going to lose in the end. So I'm in a position where I feel like Eddie is the best representation of where I'm at in this discussion, but I don't feel fulfilled with that, because I don't see how this is going to really lead us anywhere, because it is a bunch of like poetic speaking with no actual point.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Mud. And I think if Eddie had policy solutions, we know what our solution is. If he could get behind a policy solution or two, as far as these changes that he wants to see, or a path that he wants the left to go on, he needs some policy initiatives. Otherwise, they're talking two different languages and they're walking right past each other. At least that's what I view. All right, thanks, Mud. John, what you got?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's saying. This is funny. It's like BriBri is arguing for class reduction as a way to solve our problems, and like Sam said, Eddie Glaude is arguing like we got to convince the country that is racist. They got to, like, people got to stop being less racist, like, and that'll solve our problems. Like when none of these things will really solve our problems. None of these things people have been talking about, like, kind of just saying that, like, white people got to stop being racist towards us and recognize us as a racist country, blah, blah, blah. But no policy came out of that. And then you got the left doing the anti-black class reduction, which we all know, historically you lose when that shit happens. Like, so I don't know. I agree more with Eddie with this shit, but I feel like it's a conversation that's really going nowhere. You know what I mean?
Listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race.
What?
Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Back on the grill again, we grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out we're really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to U.S. Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings, we are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country to win. You need our energy. You gon' see. Listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Back on the grill again, we grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out we're really about justice and really who fake.
Until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.
very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.